and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your NASCAR's betting and DFS home. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at Notorious KRO. With me to break it down, as always, it's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
Hey, Kyle. From a mere fan perspective, I absolutely loved this Talladega race, which is probably in the minority of people considering all the complaining we had of, "Ooh, it's boring. They're just driving side by side the entire day." But from a betting perspective, I am not looking forward to any more super speedway cards. And I think I might be going the way of the dodo and sitting out both of those races to close out this season.
Cut to the super speedway races that you're definitely not going to be overexposed to, for sure. Yeah. Oh, okay. No, I had fun watching it. I was obviously the Kings game 4 against the Warriors was on, so I was locked into that, but I definitely second screened it and watched a lot more of like the middle of the race than I thought, and it worked out really well because obviously the Kings game ended, and then I was able to watch the last 30 laps of the mayhem. So,
well, I think too, it was really interesting because a lot of the complaining is coming about that there was nobody moving throughout the field. There was nobody, making passes, and we only saw a couple of times they created a third line. But I don't know. Personally, I just found it interesting watching the way that these guys were racing, and you could tell certain guys were holding back. And for instance, like as we were coming down to that third stage, how Ryan Blaney was running 70% throttle and still going as fast as Ty Gibbs, who was pedal to the metal, leading the outside line. And I don't know. I think from a novice's perspective, or if the sport wants to garner like new fans, I think them running side by side, even with no action, is much more entertaining than if they would have just gotten into a really long ass train and just rode around single file with a couple of passes here and there, because a lot of people wouldn't understand, like, that's the technique that you use at super speedways. Whereas side by side racing, at least it looks like something is happening.
Yeah, no, I think there was a lot, like, I love the philosophy and the kind of the thought that goes into where are we going to want to be, how early can we really push? Like, there was obviously a bunch of cars that were like, we need to save as much fuel as we possibly can, even if that means sitting back in 6th or 8th and just riding around for a little bit. There was a couple points where I thought maybe someone could jump in front of Gibbs and try and get some of that momentum and push forward, but that never really happened, I think, because they knew. It was also interesting to see some of the links in the chain kind of break up and like the momentum really come to a halt, and then all of a sudden they'd be pushing each other and stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought for sure you were going to get a winner between Blaney and Bubba, and of course they get into each other at the very end, and then somehow Kyle Busch, whose pit crew is like, no, come in. He's like, oh, I missed the window. Sorry.
He wasn't even like noticed the entire day. No. And, we talked about, and we've heard other drivers, they talked about Alex Bowman lucking into wins a couple of years ago and being a hack. Like, you couldn't have gotten any more lucky than Kyle Busch there, because 2 of the 3 strongest cars, in my opinion, Bubba, Blaney, and probably Hamlin on the day, were battling for the win there, and they took each other out, just leaving the door wide open for Kyle Busch, who just, methodically moved his way up there, took the right time to do it, and got home with the dub. But I mean, ultimately for me, the takeaway, if you follow me on Twitter, you saw me tweeting about it, but I'm 100% convinced at this point that Ryan Blaney, he couldn't even beat himself in a race. Like, he would figure out a way to not finish a race if he was the only person on the track and DNF or something. Like, this dude cannot make any good luck for himself.
I thought you finally found one. I will give you credit because they both looked really good. I also give you credit because RFK was awesome, and they were right there at the end. 2 top 5s, Buescher obviously top 3. Really impressive day for RFK.
Ryan Preece too, like, he looked fantastic, and he got in that wreck with Larson because he had fallen back a little bit, but He was
That
up
wreck
there
with
the whole day.
Larson was one of the scariest things I've seen in a long time.
Oh yeah. Anytime you get T-boned, I don't care if you're driving on the street, driving 30 miles an hour, or I mean, in this case, go
The
180.
way, yeah, because he went, woof. And then
Yeah, that was
the scary
terrifying.
part is like that roll bar bent. Like, imagine if that was on the other side. Like, what would that look like?
You know, I'm really curious to find out. Like, obviously, they took his car along with a couple others back to R&D, but I I'm wondering if maybe they've designed these cars on the passenger side to be able to absorb some of that impact with the roll
Yeah,
bar. So maybe they made it a little more susceptible to bending to actually absorb some of
yeah,
the impact in a situation like this. Whereas on the
knowing,
driver's side, it would have to be much more rigid,
yeah,
because if that were to occur on the driver's side of the car, like we may have seen the unthinkable, at
yeah.
Talladega.
No, knowing they have some wiggle room to play with, that makes sense. So let me share my screen here, and we can look at.
The carnage that was
Yeah, I
the
think it's
GEICO
this
500.
one. Yeah. So like I said, Brian, don't get crazy. Definitely lucked into a few. Probably could have had a better day with another few. Overall, it was fine. Ross Chastain was there all day. I thought that's a bet I would be happy to make again. Alex Bowman was a late ad. I added it on Saturday, or maybe Sunday morning. I don't remember.
I liked it. Good value. 28
Added
to
a
1.
good number. Added it to the betting card. I'm trying to be better about creating a little card and tweeting it out before race. So you can kind of see where we're at. One of our commenters also liked Bowman. I thought that was a smart play. Eric Jones was solid, not great, but not terrible. Eric Jones, I thought I was going to pull a top 5. Of course, he ends up 6th behind Kozlowski because, of course. Todd Gilliland, top 10. How about that? Bubba, top 5, I thought was a really good bet. He was there all day. And if he doesn't get caught up in that last little bit of carnage. And honestly, for Talladega, like especially from after what we saw in the Xfinity race, it wasn't that wild. Like
Well, I think that was a product of what like guys like Jeff Gluck and all of them had been tweeting early in the morning about how the word out of the garage with that guy was that guys were going to ride side by side to just let the race get into the final stage and then start racing, going to that
yeah,
traditional super speedway type stuff. And you saw it with Eric Jones in particular being the guy that wanted to start that third lane all the time. And it would work at times and then they would just fall back tremendously. But I was actually pleased to see that at the end of stages too, because we've seen it in the past. At the stage breaks, we've seen wrecks because guys are racing for stage points. Whereas this year we didn't get those, and I think that was really nice to see that guys would not go too crazy just to win the first stage or to get
yeah,
one extra stage point there when they knew they still had 2 full stages to go, which made the end of the race that much more intense because like I had tweeted out, you had pretty much an entire field of cars still in the main draft going that could potentially win here for the first time in who the hell knows at a super speedway.
Yeah, and I know we talked a little about it before the race, but SHR was not terrible. Almirola looked pretty good. He was there,
Yeah.
obviously won stage 2, made some noise at the end, but a pretty good appearance. Noted, taking advantage of that, and going to keep following that to see if that's something we could take advantage of as the season goes along. So overall, a fine day. Made a little bit of a profit, basically pushed money around. So I am not going to complain, especially after a super speedway day. Brian, on the other hand, got a little crazy. Lots of outrights. Like I said,
Very small unit plays though.
Bubba and Blaney both felt like legitimate winners. Chastain was there. Hell, Chris Buescher got 3rd. Like there was a lot of Brian Priest was running up there. You were on a lot of the right horses. They just couldn't quite get there at the end because of all the stuff that happened. So pretty rough day. But your Chris Buescher top 5 did come through, so that's good to see.
I definitely lucked into that, but I think for me, the 2 hardest one or the 3 hardest ones to stomach are Bubba over Stenhouse, Bubba top Toyota, and Bubba in that group of drivers because it came
It was right. You were on the
99.9%
nose.
of the race.
Yeah.
Those were fantastic bets. And all it took was, one lap to go, and he ruined the entire day and my entire betting card.
Yep. And it was a frustrating day for sure. Speaking of frustrating, let's head over to DraftKings where it was not our day. Once again, I think we got a lot of the right pieces together. Noah Gragson actually looked,
same thing.
He was running there the whole race until he crashed at the end. Obviously, Gilliland got to the top 10. Eric Jones was 6th after starting 24th. Like we had a lot of it together. Austin Dillon was good. Priest was strong at points. And then obviously Denny was right there too. So I feel pretty good about how we got to our lineups. They just did not, at the end of the day, have the day we wanted. Blaney and Bubba, along with the 2 RFK boys, like that's awesome. And then it was really just Haley moved up. Zane Smith, I think if Bubba finishes the race, we have a much better day. This probably cashes pretty easily. And we did not. So Busher
especially
was
with Bubba only being rostered in 11%.
Yeah. Busher only 7%. Like we talked about Busher being the guy kind of on the outlet. Interesting. And then third and final, Chase was going to be popular, and he honestly, for how popular he was and kind of the day he had, I think he would have been an easy fade and made a lot of sense to kind of avoid. I think Chastain had a much better day than his results indicate. Bowman was fine. McDowell was the one that was annoying.
That was so frustrating.
He didn't really do anything to crash. Like he just kind of took himself out. So,
well, he had something broke in the car on lap 2.
Yeah,
he ran the entire race with a broken car.
That's not what you're looking for. That's just simply not. So, but we're on to Dover. Let's actually let me change my view really quick. Much better. All right, so we're on to Dover. We'll talk about some of the early odds, some of the early favorites, and where we may or may not be getting involved early. I think the market's pretty on point this week. Kyle Larson is your favorite. William Byron, Chase Elliott are all inside 7-1. And then we kind of go into another tier. But I guess before we do that, Larson, Byron, Elliott, any of them jumping out to you as guys that even at their prices you'd be considering? Or is it really just scratch off and on to the next group?
I mean, we've talked about this before in the past, especially with a guy like Kyle Larson, and I think Chase Elliott fits this mold too, is that they're so good, and if you find a track where they have an edge at, anything that's like over 5-1 at this point is way more value than we were seeing from guys like this a couple of years ago, like when Larson had completely monopolized the sport. Yep. I mean, you were betting him at plus 350 at tracks or plus 300.
Yeah, you were excited to bet him at plus 300.
Yeah, so I mean, like I think both of those guys offer some value, and I think it's really interesting to note too. Like coming into this weekend at the Monster Mile, Hendrick Motorsports has been a juggernaut here. They've won 9 of the last 17 races. I believe it's like 5 of the last 9 or something like that. Elliott's won twice, and of the group, William Byron's the only one that hasn't found victory lane here. So, I think he's somebody who. I wouldn't bet that 7-1 on him, but I mean, it's only a matter of time before they put their 4th car in there. And, of the group, he's probably having the best all around season, I would think at this point. I mean, Elliott clearly has only ran a couple of races, but of them, I think Byron is somebody who to keep an eye on, especially with his lack of success at Dover.
Yeah, and he's been doing good on obviously Phoenix is a similar setup, obviously like a flat track doesn't have the banking. Ran well at Vegas. Like it makes sense for him to perform really well here. And yeah, the pricing is aggressive, but of the 3, I think he would be my favorite pick, but I wouldn't fault anybody who went to any of these guys. I think they all make a ton of sense. The next tier is really interesting. Obviously, Christopher Bell. I don't know why he doesn't have a headshot. It's very interesting. Denny Hamlin 8 or 9 to 1. Kevin Harvick I like a lot, 11 to 1. Party Marty 11-12. Chastain, and then Bowman, the defending champ, Kyle Busch. I'll cut it off there. Of this next chunk, is there anybody jumping out to you as a value?
I mean, the first guy's got to be Kevin Harvick at 11 to 1 at DK. Like, it's his last year. He's been great here. He's another guy. He's got multiple wins here at Dover. And just to continue along, like the dominance factor at Dover, each of the last 17 winners here has been a Hendrick, JGR, or a Kevin Harvick. So, I mean, you could pretty much eliminate Ross Chastain from this top group of favorites and just cherry pick all of those guys. And for me, like for my money, I think the best value is on Kevin Harvick, especially knowing his success here. He's looked a lot better this year than we saw out of him last year in the new car. And, these are the type of tracks that he excels at. So I think Harvick at 11 to 1 is probably my favorite pick, my favorite odds at the moment among the top, 7 to 8 guys.
Yeah, no, I think he jumps out. And it's interesting to see him priced here. Obviously, we've talked about him as kind of he's really more of a top 5 guy, but I think he's shown enough in a few races, and obviously his history at this race. He's the only person who has a better average rating over the last, basically since February of 2020. At Dover is Kyle Larson. So that says a lot about how strong he's been. Average finish of 5th. I got a win, a couple of top 5. So he's been money at this track. So I like the 11 to 1. I'm looking at, might look at the top 5, top 3 and see what those offer. But yeah, I think he makes sense. I know, Chastain, I don't know. He's probably priced fine. Alex Bowman is the cheapest Hendrick guy. So if you want to get in on some Hendrick magic, you can get 15 to 1 on him, 14 to 1. I think that's a fine number. I don't know that I'm necessarily going back to Kyle Busch. I know he didn't really run that well to end up winning. Obviously, Dega's its own animal, but kind of thought that was interesting. Let's jump down to the next range where we have Tyler Reddick kicking us off, and then we get into like the 20s with Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney. I guess I'll cut it off there because then we get into 30s and we keep going. So, are you? I mean, I don't want to put my finger into your open wound or whatever the saying is, but 20, you can get 28 to 1 on him. Like, are you?
Absolutely not.
No. Not doing it.
I think at this point, like, although I kept banging the drum for I'm just going to continue to bet him until he wins, like, I would probably go bankrupt by the time this dude actually found victory lane. And I think it's almost better off that people just stop completely betting him. And we've almost reached the Ricky Stenhouse level of it's never going to happen at a super speedway with him, just at all for Blaney at any track. At this point, I want to see him win a race before I have any more confidence in actually betting him at the sportsbook.
Yeah. I know it's gross, but Joey Logano is somewhat interesting. Obviously didn't run well in the new car here last year, but is a guy who's traditionally done pretty well. Obviously has been really, really strong this season. And you're getting a decent price at 22 to 1. I wouldn't fault anybody who took a little nibble at that rate. Brian did mention it to me before we started recording, but it's looking likely that we won't have practice or qualifying this week, which sucks to kind of see where some of these guys unload and kind of what their potential may be. But in terms of us recording, hopefully we'll be able to record a little earlier and then get it out to you. We try and get it out as early as possible most of the time, especially out here on the West Coast. By the time practice is done and the odds have been updated and everything's been shaken out, and we get it recorded, you can't get it out till the next morning. But when it works out, it works out. So make sure you are subscribed if you haven't yet done that. We appreciate everybody who's jumping on board. We're always climbing. We'd love to get to 1,000 subs by the end of the NASCAR season. Always smash the like if you're enjoying it, and let us know down in the comments. Who are you betting? Who do you think has value this week? Any outrights you think, wow, that's a really good number. I'm going to jump on it while I can. Are you considering the RFK guys? You can get them as long as 35-1. Chase Briscoe's in there. Daniel Suarez is in there. Bubba's kind of in that range. Anybody there that's really interesting to you?
I mean, honestly, I feel like we're back to, especially over this next 3 race, grouping here before we hit the All-Star break. I think it's going to be a
wild statement that is, by the way.
Yeah, right. We're almost halfway through the regular
flying
season.
By.
Yeah. I think this is a case where you're going to want to stay near the top of the board this week, for legit contenders to win, because just the range of outcomes at a track like Dover is much more narrow to what we saw last week at Talladega. And traditionally there, like I said, this is a very small group of guys that actually have a shot to win here. So for me, I'm probably not going any lower than 20, or, like you said, I won't do it, but Logano at 22, I think makes some sense. And then if you want to dabble, Ryan Blaney at 28 is a great number for a driver of his caliber, but I'd be sticking to everybody above them and not even entertaining anybody below.
So have you added any outrights officially to the card? And if not, who are the short list of names that you're considering adding?
Well, I'm gonna add Kevin Harvick. I was so close to hitting with him a couple of weeks ago. I think there was a caution that came out that ruined his day. So I think Harvick is a guy he's been showing enough to, be able to win these races. So I think he's going to be the first guy. And then as we get closer to practice and qualifying time, if I hear word like we're not going to have practice or qualifying, I might jump on some numbers that I think may move, to the shorter side, especially if the starting grid is going to be based on that algorithm, an equation that nobody knows how to figure out.
I heard Bob Pockers has a whiteboard somewhere that he does all the math on himself.
That would be epic to see. Kind of like we used to have the Obama bracket for March.
It's very much like a Goodwill Hunting situation where he does it in a math class at like 2 in the morning.
Yeah, I think that'd be great to see. But yeah, no, as of right now, the only outright I'm going to add is Kevin Harvick.
For me, there is a short list. Harvick's on it. William Byron is on it. I think Ross Chastain might be on it, and then Joey Logano's on it. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. I probably won't bet all of them.
So gross.
Yeah, it's really gross, but I'm gonna cobble together something this week. We hit 2 outrights back to back. Obviously, last week was a mess. I think we can get back on track though, and find ourselves a winner again this week. So I think Byron and Harvick are going on for sure. There's probably going to be a third or fourth name depending on how gross I get. I might do. My debate is, do I go like Chastain and Logano, or do I just go back up to the top and grab a Larson or a Chase Elliott or even Chris Bell?
True. I think something else that's important to note too, at Dover, starting position has mattered a whole lot here. With, I believe there's only been one winner over the last 18 races to start outside of the top 17 or something like that. So clearly if we don't get practice and qualifying and it's based on owner points, driver points, last week's finishing position, blah, 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 somebody who's going to fall outside of the normal starting position range for this race is going to be Chase Elliott. So I don't know if you might want to wait because maybe his number stays at that 7.5 or maybe even goes to 8. But, I don't know how much the sports books are going to read into this type of stuff. But Dover is clearly a place where it's difficult to move through the field, and a bad starting spot is not going to be easy to overcome.
Well, and I tell you what, the books might not know right away, but the bettors with the big chunks of change will put their money where their mouth is, and Elliott will be one of the guys that falls. And based on the math, William Byron should probably be starting near the front somewhere. So he's somebody that I'm probably jumping in on. So I added Byron at 7 and I added Harvick at 11. I'm debating my third name, but we'll see where that goes. Let's head over to Caesars. We'll look at some head-to-heads. We'll look at some top 10s. We'll look at some top Toyotas, that kind of stuff. See if there's anything that tickles our fancy this early in the market.
Already.
Harvick over Truex.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like
that's a no-brainer.
I feel like a little caution. Like, what are we missing? Why is that like that? Why is it priced accordingly? Should we?
Well, I mean, Truex has the third best average finish over the last 10 races at Dover, but both of last year's races were outside the top 10. While Kevin Harvick has the most top 10s in the last 10, and that's 9, and he's top 5, I believe, 5 or 6 times, 5 times over the stretch too. So for me, I think the advantage definitely goes to KV.
Byron over Elliott is interesting, especially if we get the qualifying set by points and stuff.
Yeah.
Because that would be a pretty sizable difference. That's something that tickles my fancy a little bit. Logano over Blaney, I think, is a good bet at -120. In fact, I will take that. I know it hurts, but
yeah, I'm not touching that. I can't.
I understand. I think that makes me feel better, to be honest.
I'll still be cheering for Blaney. Like, if he gets the win, believe me, I'll probably shed a tear, but like, he won't be on my card this week.
Ty Gibbs over Ryan Preece. Chastain as a dog to Kyle Busch. That's interesting.
Let me just say one thing on Ty Gibbs real quick. Like, I've been extremely impressed with how well he's transitioned from Xfinity to the Cup Series. I mean, we saw the talent last year. He actually ran a little bit better than I thought he would to close out 2022. And this year he's definitely proving why he earned the spot, even though, it's probably a little bit of nepotism, whatever, going to JGR with his grandfather there. But like, he's definitely one of the best, 35 drivers in the sport.
Yeah, it definitely feels like if JGR hadn't given him a seat, he would have gotten a seat, and it would have been a pretty decent team somewhere.
Well, I mean, you got to think teams probably would have definitely taken him over a Zane Smith, if he hadn't been in a JGR car. So, I mean,
Chris Bell at +105 against Denny. That's interesting. Busher, Bubba, Shouts to Caesars for actually having stuff, though. That's pretty impressive.
Hey, as far as the markets go, I feel like Caesars has been the most consistent with dropping lines.
Got them out early, not horrendous prices. Obviously, it's -120 isn't exactly what you're looking for, but it's fine enough. All right, so let's look at some top 10 numbers that might actually be appealing, because most of these numbers are really like, unless you're putting 5 units down, I'm not betting -175 on Harvick to top 10, even though it feels like free money. It's just NASCAR is so scary. I don't know. Because you could have the right bet, you could be right for 99.9% of the race, and then Brad Keselowski could put you into the wall for no reason, and then you finish 11th and you just drop 5 units and you cry yourself to sleep. Logano to top 10 at +100 is interesting.
I don't think the number is good enough to bet a Logano at +100. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, he's fantastic, and he's top 10 in half of the last 10 here, but Penske has not looked great at a lot of tracks this year.
And it's interesting too, because like the number itself is gross, but then you have to compare it to the other numbers in market, and does it make sense? I don't know. It's hard to get super excited about a +100 on a guy that you don't think can absolutely top 10.
Yeah, I'm excited because I'm going to be in Vegas this weekend for the race, or if the race even occurs, because it might actually. There's rumors, or people are chattering, that maybe we get a doubleheader on Monday, which would be fantastic for me working from home. But I'll be excited to be in Vegas and check out some of the markets we get to see if I can get a hold of any of these yes/no wagers on a top 10 finish or top 5 finish, because I think there's some value in some of those.
Yeah, I might have to slide into the old PayPal and have you comment, make some wagers on my behalf. All right, let's look at top 3, because I think Kevin Harvick at plus 320. What's his top 5 number? Because he's somebody I want more action on. Plus 160 to top 5, plus 320 to top 3. I'm going to take the Harvick top 3. I know you're really asking for a lot, and I know I'm going to take the top 5. I'm going to play it smart.
Woo-hoo.
Probably should take the top 10, to be honest, but that number at minus 180 or whatever it is not like that. Just makes your stomach turn. So I will take let's see, where is it? Top 5 at plus 160. I'm good with that. It gives me a little more wiggle room. Anyone you want to look at in the top 3, top 5 market? Anybody jumping out to you?
I mean, there's not. It's just so hard right now because all I keep thinking about is what's going to happen when we don't practice or qualify. You know, some of these numbers.
Yeah, so I would. Anybody you're really excited about that you think will get hammered once we know starting grid. That's the guys you want to wait and want to get on, and the guys that may have to drop or you may get a better number on. Be patient with.
Yeah, man. As sickening as it is, like I'm really interested in the Kyle Larson minus 130 top 5 finish. I know it's like ridiculous
to fine number
to lay, negative money on a top 5, but I mean, he's been great here over the 8 races that he's had in the Cup Series.
Seeing if I could parlay a couple of those. They never let you do any of that stuff.
I mean, you're talking about Larson. His worst finish here is 12th. Each
plus
of his
160 to top 3.
Yeah, but there's just so much more that could go wrong with that,
Oh, for sure. William Byron to top 5 at plus 110.
I don't mind the Denny one. You know what? I'm gonna do it. This is not in my nature, but I'm gonna add the Larson top 5 at minus 130.
I think it's a good number, and I also like Byron this week, but I also could see Byron getting past and Kyle Larson winning the race, and all of a sudden he's second instead of third, or second instead of first, and now I'm like kicking myself.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the most intriguing numbers are going to be Chase Elliott, I think, going forward towards the rest of the week. And if he qualifies, and he's probably going to qualify well here, I think this top 5 number definitely falls under even. But if he's starting near the back of the field, like, you probably get a better number come Sunday. And, this is a guy who's been equally as good as Kyle Larson at this track. It's just difficult. Just in the past, it's been really hard for guys to move from the back to the front. So I think you could probably get a better number on Elliott, especially with what the weather forecast is looking like.
I'm going to add the Byron top 5 as well, just because I expect him to either qualify well or be put up near the front and that number to go away. So I will take advantage of that. I'm not going to get crazy this week, Brian. We got to keep ourselves in check so we don't end up overexposed and regretting a lot of the decisions we made. Let's look at some manufacturer bets before we get out of here.
Already adding.
Kyle Larson?
No, Harvick top Ford. I skipped immediately down to the Fords. He's plus 190. I mean, he's only competing against, a handful of guys that actually have a legit shot that can run better than him outside of him wrecking. So, I mean, you're getting a great number in a scenario where he doesn't even have to finish top 10, basically, to cash this.
Yep, I have him on outright. I have him on top 5. I think it makes a lot of sense too. And honestly, I would much rather bet him at top Ford at plus 190 than to bet him to top 5 at plus 160.
Yeah, because like I said, like, okay, for instance, last spring here, Hendrick swept the top 4 finishers at this track.
Yeah.
I mean,
So you're
there's
basically
a
one
legit
spot left.
possibility that happens again.
Yep. That's
and mind you, JGR has been the second best team here, with Denny Hamlin being absolutely incredible. Martin Truex has a tremendous pass. So there's a legit scenario where the top 6 is made up of Hendrick and JGR guys, with Harvick outside of that and still finishing as the top 4.
That's a great call. Top Toyota is tough because Hamlin, Bell, and Truex I think are all in a similar bucket. Obviously, they're priced accordingly. Truex at plus 280 is the best value for that group, so maybe he makes the most sense. But all those guys are really hard to get to.
Yeah, and Truex, I don't know. He's shown spurts, but I mean, right now it's definitely Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell as the top 2 guys there for me.
What do you think about Chevy's minus 290 feels aggressive, but it's probably correct.
Yeah. Now, are these for best finisher?
Yeah. So, like, whatever the top Chevy is versus whatever the top Ford is how I assume it goes. So Toyota over Ford is kind of interesting, just because you get Hamlin, Bell, Truex, Tyler Reddick, even versus like Harvick and Logano. I know it's minus 140, but I feel like those are better options.
Honestly, I'd probably rather just go with the plus money on the Ford. I don't think there's much value in that bet. Just kind of you could attack this from another angle, but I mean, it being that Kevin Harvick is probably going to be one of the competitors to win the race. Like, I think there's a legit shot that he finishes, second, third, top 3, and tops all the Toyotas. I mean,
that's true. That's a good call. I mean, we both have him on the outright, so if he wins the race, we're screwed. So, if they do have qualifying, Larson's obviously an interesting pick, easy at minus 280. Chase Elliott at 450. Kevin
he
Harvick,
does not like Kyle
he does
Larson.
not like the qualifying. He doesn't want to hear that it might get worn out.
Yeah.
Bell at 9-1 is interesting. Truex at 8-1. Harvick at 9-1. Like, this range is kind of interesting. If you want to take a couple, like throw $10 on each of them and see if you can hit a winner. Bowman at 15. I like that.
What's the Kyle Larson number here?
Plus 230 or 280. You can probably find a better number. You can probably get 3.5 to 1 on him, which is still not great, but interesting.
I think Denny is somebody to keep an eye on, but
6-1. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean he's done pretty well at qualifying here. That said, Kyle Larson hasn't qualified outside the top 4 in any of the last 4.
And he's priced accordingly, and it's probably a good bet. But we'll see if we even get qualifying at this point.
Yeah.
I
mean, Denny Hamlin did start last year's race runner up. So
yeah. Okay, I think that's it. Should we review our card, give people a best bet, and get out of here?
Yeah, let's. Amazingly, somehow Kyle and I's cards are shorter at this moment for Dover than they were last week at the most
uncertain race. We're trying to stay within the lines. I'm sure we'll get adventurous, but at this point, we're trying to be smart. It is only Tuesday. We're a day early because of scheduling stuff, so that worked out. Let's not get too crazy. So I have 2 outrights. I have Harvick and I have Byron. I have Kevin Harvick to top 5. I have William Byron to top 5. I have Kevin Harvick as the top Ford. And then my head-to-head is Logano over Blaney at minus $1.20. Brian has Harvick outright. Larson top 5 at minus 130, which feels gross, but I can see that being minus 200 when we get to race time, and he'll be very happy to have it. Harvick over Truex and Harvick top Ford. Brian, what is your best bet as we sit here on Wednesday?
I mean, I'm definitely going out on a limb and reaching for the stars, unlike I normally do. But I'm gonna go with the Larson top 5
Yeah,
at minus 130 here. I mean, barring a wreck or unforeseen circumstances, I see no reason why Larson shouldn't be inside the top 5 all day here. So
yep.
I'm gonna
I think
smash.
it's
I'm gonna go 3 units on this
I think
play.
that's I think that's a really good bet. It's scary and gross, but I think we're evolving as NASCAR bettors and not just shooting for the biggest payday, but actually going for the best
Yeah,
wager. So I like that.
tell that to my bankroll.
I'm gonna go with Logano over Blaney.
Gross.
Yeah, I trust Joey much more to be where he needs to be at the end of the day, as opposed to Ryan Blaney, who, we'll see if he can keep all 4 tires on his car and not have a wedge wrench get stuck in the back, or who knows what will
Have his
happen.
best friend put do
Yeah,
the triple deke on him and cost him the race win.
yeah. So, I love Byron, I love Harvick this week, but I'm gonna go with Logano over Blaney. At this point, obviously, like I said, Brian and I will be back. So if you are enjoying the content, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you smash that thumbs up, and let us know your favorite bet as we sit here. It'll be Wednesday for y'all. And then Brian and I will be back this weekend. Brian live from Las Vegas, and I will be here, but we'll see about scheduling. So make sure you are subscribed, so as soon as that video drops, you get a notification. Hit the little bell icon if you don't mind. That is Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next time.